Уважаемые коллеги,
Dear colleagues, always when we do not keep to the time, we say that we live in Russia, not in Germany. I am sorry for 15 minutes delay. Our forum is very interesting, and unfortunately, sometimes it's impossible to keep the time. Thank you very much for being here. Uh, If somebody wants to take seat, please take a seat. The students can sit on the stairs. It's totally okay. It's not a problem. Today we will speak about the international standards of training of public administration personnel. I'm very glad to have all other speakers here. It's the first time we celebrate such a discussion. Also, during all the 10 years of celebration of Gaidar Forum, one of the main topics was the one of the training of public administration staff. But today we are on a very interesting stage, and we have space for discussion to see whether we are ready or not ready, and even more, if we have to or not have to be a part of the unique international accreditation space. The majority of those who are here today, they think that we should do it, but it's a good topic for discussion. If we enter this accreditation space, how should we do it? We're ready to cooperate with the leader European agencies, and we hope that Russian agencies who are present here today, I'll mention them, they are also ready to do it. So I would like to welcome Mr. Tucker Brunson, the Secretary General of EAPAA. To my left, Mr. George Heinel, the President of the Network of Institutes and Schools of Public Administration in Central and Eastern Europe. I'm also very glad to welcome our colleague and our partner, the representative of the network of the institutes and schools of public administration in Central and Eastern Europe, Mr. Yuri Nemetz, and Mr. Jeffrey Osgood, President of Commission for Accreditation of NASPAA, International Network of School of Public Affairs, Public Policy Affairs and Administration. And I should mention that it's mostly United States network, but the Americans like to call everything that has to do with United States international. We are very glad to welcome you here. Thank you for being here, and also would like to thank our colleagues from the CIS countries. We have here people from Kazakhstan, rector of the State Academy of Public Administration, Ms. Zhakipova. I also saw the Tajikistan, Armenia, and Uzbekistan academies representatives. Thank you very much for coming. And I'm also very glad to our Russian participants. We have plenty of them in this room today, but the main ones are Alexei Komissarov, the vice rector of our academy. But for all people in mass media space in Russia, this is the person who chooses the leaders of Russia. Every day he has 3-4 calls, and he's asked for help. People are calling me also, asking for help to connect with him. So, Alexei, we have another Alexei here, Mr. Alexei Shaposhnikov, and although there are some rumors in the internet, he is a very reasonable, interesting, and intelligent person, and it's more. Alexei knows how to count not only the deputies of the Moscow State Duma, but he is in the first place my colleague, professor of our academy, who graduated from our academy, and he is the leader of the scientific problem MPA in Russia. So Alexei, thank you very much for your support and for scientific tutoring. And finally, I would like to welcome our friends from the High School of Economy and from Moscow University of International Affairs. Thank you very much for being here, and I would like to tell you that the introduction of those program wasn't easy. Yesterday I mentioned about the history of training of public administration. But honestly, the history of training isn't very long. The council was created in 2008 for MPA, and 2009 the MPA program started in Russia, and today we celebrate the 10 years anniversary. In 2012 we had there was a law about education which was approved, and in 2013 it became valid, and we lost the accreditation for such programs. So we had two options: seek for an exclusion of that law, or follow the way of public open accreditation. We've chosen the second way. In 2015 we approved the first standards for MPA program. Our National Association of Business training approved those standards, and yesterday in the meeting with our colleagues we approved the new version which was coordinated with our European colleagues. There are no disconformities, and we as a lawyers asked for confirmation in writing, which was presented by Mr. Brunson. And now you have the word, Mr. Brunson. Welcome. You have to push the button.
Thank you, and I'm very pleased to see so many of you have come here today. I would like to tell a little about, very little about where I'm from. I represent the European Association for Public Administration Accreditation, and I'd like to tell a little about the philosophy behind our approach. Which I would say is distinctive from some others. It's not unique. It's similar to NASPAA's, for instance, but it has certain traits. Yes. So what is a EAPAA? It's an organization that accredits programs, originally only bachelor and master programs. We are also starting accrediting PhD programs in public administration soon. And we're now active in about, or exactly 16 countries, which includes Russia, I'm happy to say, since we accredited the program from the High School of Economics 1.5 years ago. What is distinctive about how we work? I'd like to mention 4 things that are typical of us. One is that we do assessments based on peer review by independent experts. So people are judged by the same type of animal as they are. The people who will come to accredit are people who are usually active in teaching public administration. And as you probably know, it is very frustrating to be evaluated by someone who does not understand your work. So it makes a great deal of difference to the quality of evaluation if these are people who will know the business, who know how to operate here. So this is very important. Second, we are what we call mission-based. We try to mediate between general standards, so the general standards that we use as an international organization, but also to have an understanding of local context, because in different countries, in different places, programs have different resources, they face different challenges in how they work, and you cannot just put one bar there. You have to understand where they come from and how well they are operating in their particular context. And in that sense, in every case, we also have to learn about the place that we're visiting, the country that we're visiting, to really make a good evaluation. The pictures on the slide, by the way, are from a very good photography series, Bureaucratics, by a Dutch photographer, Jan Banning. I really recommend it. Spot the Russian civil servant in the picture, I would say. Third point, it's not just about passing the minimum, because that would be easy, because then the top programs would be guaranteed to get this accreditation. We always try to look beyond the minimum standards. They can always do better. So even when we visit the top programs in Europe, and we have most of them on our list, then each time we look for their particular strengths, but also weaknesses, because they can always do better. And we usually manage to find the weaknesses. And then finally, I like to mention that we are a not-for-profit organization. And in that sense, we're quite different from some other accreditation organizations out there. We try to keep our fees, our prices low. So we work mostly with volunteers. They're highly senior experts, but they give their time freely to work for our organization because they feel it's in the interest of the field. And we keep our prices low as compared to, say, we're very much cheaper than business school accreditation, for instance, so that all programs from all countries can benefit from this. Why would you accredit internationally? It's to make sure that people remain independent, because you need experts who have expertise. That's one thing, but you also need them not to be connected to the program in any way. Especially in small countries, it can be very hard to find public administration experts who are not connected. We've done accreditations in Estonia, for instance, where there are only 2 programs. It's impossible to find anyone who's not either a friend or a competitor. So that then it helps to have an international pool of experts. There's greater opportunities for learning, because international experts bring their own experiences and ideas to a program. But also you see that the field is internationalizing. Increasingly you have exchanges, traditionally of students, but also increasingly of teaching staff or the administrative staff. Say the staff of the international office, university, they go to other places. So that strengthens the international element. And finally, a very important part of our work has been to strengthen the recognition of public administration as a separate discipline. It's not the same as business management, it's not the same as political science, it's something distinctive. And that's part of why we were set up. Quickly, how are we governed? We have 2 governors, so to speak. One is the European Group of Public Administration, and the other is NASPAA, represented here by Georgi Hainal. However, they control the board. They do not control our evaluations. They have absolutely no say over the decisions that we take in accreditation. It's an independent committee that makes these judgments. They appoint their own members. They set their own criteria. So no one can influence them formally. And there's a small secretariat that does our operations. How am I on time? Okay. Very briefly, what are our criteria? These are based on the European standards and guidelines with which you are probably familiar. These look very much whether the program is coherent. Does the ambitions that it sets, are they matched by actions, so to speak? Do the didactics fit these ambitions? The courses, the content that you have, do you have the faculty that's good enough to achieve it? What we place very much emphasis on is that faculty has the necessary expertise, and if it's an academic program, then the faculty should be aware of the latest developments in public administration. They cannot be teaching stuff from 20 years ago. It should be updated, so that's why they should be active. And we have additional criteria. For instance, how international a program is, we value that, but also diversity, for instance, in terms of gender or ethnicity, is part of what we look at. Very briefly on the procedure, how does that work when we come? The program applies. Then we check if it's eligible. That means it has got to be running for some time. There got to be 2 cohorts of students who have graduated. This is because we want to question people who have actually finished the program. What did you think of it? The program has to report self-evaluation, so it has to write up. For many programs, this is the most important part of the process, to reflect on its own achievements. Where are we now? Where do we want to go? Perhaps this is even more important than the actual evaluation. Then we look at the report, whether it makes any sense, whether it's complete, and then there's a so-called site visit where a team comes for 2 days to grill the program and ask all sorts of awkward questions. It makes a report that the program can react to, and then finally the accreditation committee I mentioned earlier makes a decision, and that can be a yes or no or something yes but if. And finally, a point I've been stressed by, I got a lot of questions about from people from this country. The self-evaluation reports we get are confidential, so no one gets to see them. So are the site visit reports. We do publish summarized evaluations, but all the information that goes into the evaluation is just for the committee, and then they're under oath to keep it secret. That was a very brief summary of what we do. I hope you find it useful. If you want to know more about our organization, please visit our website or feel free to mail us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Brunson. For this presentation to be complete and comprehensive, and considering that they are part of the European Association, I would like to pass the floor on to Georgi Hainal, who is the president of NASPAA, and so that he could share of the experience of accrediting associations in Central and Eastern Europe. When we talked with Mr. Hainal, I said that we are ready to launch a very frank, open-minded talk, and we even need more than just a set of facts. We need to learn more about challenges and some difficulties our counterparts from what used to be Central and Eastern Europe, known to be, but now they call it Central and Eastern Europe, especially that Mr. Hainal is based in Budapest, and before his current position he used to work at Department of Politics and Public Administration. So he has a perspective of an academic and public servant. You have the floor, sir.
Thanks for the invitation. Actually, I'm still academic director of a program in public policy and management at Corvinus University of Budapest. And what I would like to do is to share a few experiences, a few of my impressions about why people, why programs choose to undergo international accreditation, what are the expectations, and what are the actual or possible outcomes or effects of an international accreditation. Because frequently you think about international accreditation as a goal in and by itself, but actually it is an instrument to achieve further goals. So I would like to talk a little bit about those further objectives and effects. One set of effects is related to the domestic environment of the given program. In addition to being academic director of a program and one of the president of one of the NASPAA, one of the stakeholders, which is NASPAA, I am also taking part in accreditation exercises since I am a member of the accreditation board. And I see the motivations, and I see I'm also able a little bit to follow up on the effects. So returning to the question of domestic effects, I see a broad range of effects, possible or actual effects, which are not really tied to the international scene. They are really focused on the domestic scene, but they are important. One of the effects is that, or possible effects, is that the institutional legitimacy of the given program, of the given institution, can increase significantly. This can have further important, because in many countries actually still the very disciplinary identity of public policy, public administration is a little bit uncertain. So having an international accreditation in this field can strengthen or create that identity, which in turn may lead to a better legal environment. For example, an acknowledgement of the given program as a possible or even as a compulsory prerequisite of employment in the civil services. So institutional embeddedness of the given program can improve domestically. The second one is, of course, market, domestic market. Domestic market consists of two things. Of course, higher education institutions want to have students. So that's a very important resource. You have to attract students. Most of the students do not directly care about international accreditation, but over time they can appreciate, especially when the international effects become visible on the domestic side. As I will come back to this in a minute. Finally, the domestic position of the given organization can improve vis-à-vis other national domestic partners. For example, in partnering for international or national research tenders or contract research and that kind of stuff. So if you are accredited, this is another expectation that you might have. So that's the domestic part. But internationally, it is a little bit different, but still sometimes you can expect important effects on the international markets. Many of these effects apply only to programs that have an English language variant, though. Not all of them, but many of them. So, for example, attracting international students is much easier if you have international accreditation. In many instances, memberships in international academic training networks are also depending on such accreditation. For example, you have the EMPA, the European Masters of Public Administration Network, where a sort of international accreditation is actually a requirement of membership. Also, if you are thinking about double degree programs with Western universities, that kind of an accreditation might improve the legitimacy of the program. And in turn, this can have a positive effect on attracting also domestic students, because if you have this kind of international education cooperations, then it can be an appealing factor to domestic students as well. So basically that is the bottom line. Frequently international accreditations such as EAPAA, right now we are preparing our accreditation in Budapest because it just expires, so now I am also sitting on the other side of the table. I am going to undergo accreditation within a couple of months. So one of the things we expect is domestic legitimacy, strengthening of the domestic market, research and training, and also internationally. And I think both feet are important. So we should not underestimate any one of these. Therefore, I think that these kinds of international accreditations are a very important instrument in promoting the institutional identity and visibility of our academic field of public policy and public administration. Thank you very much.
Благодарю, Джорджа.
Thank you, Georgia. And to finalize this European presentation, we have heard from the EAPAA and the European network. I would now pass on the floor to NASPAA, to the network from the United States. And Mr. Osgood is going to talk about what he calls the global standard or global accreditation. With all respect for the globalist trends, I would still like to get more specifics as regards the global nature of this accreditation from the perspective of NASPAA, and whether you believe that this global accreditation can incorporate or include not only European colleagues, they can deal with that, but whether Russia and the Commonwealth of Independent States, the CIS, can be accommodated here, or other developing markets. You have the floor, Jeff.
Thank you. On behalf of NASPAA, I want to thank the Gaidar Forum and the organizers of this panel for inviting NASPAA to participate. So I hope in my presentation to answer your question about global accreditation and whether NASPAA is prepared to do that. So we take a public service values approach. Much of what Taco discussed is a similar approach to our accreditation processes. We also do a mission-based approach, but we also emphasize public service values. And those public service values are actually found in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially Sustainable Development Goal number 16, with 193 signatories. We think that using those public service values allow for this to be a global accreditation process. So a couple of things. So our program began in 1977. We started accrediting at that time. We began accrediting internationally in 2010. We also have a similar governance structure as the other accreditors here today. We have a governing body, which is the Network of Schools of Public Policy Affairs and Administration, with its own board. But we have a separate and independent Commission on Peer Review and Accreditation, of which I am chair, and that it makes independent decisions. It is autonomous from the larger organization, and that helps to ensure that there's no interference in the accreditation process. We've accredited over 202 programs, and as Igor said earlier, the vast majority of those are in the United States, but increasingly we are becoming global. We now accredit programs in 7 countries. That includes, outside of the United States, leading programs in China, Colombia, Egypt, New Zealand, South Korea, and Venezuela. We currently have a number of programs from other countries in our eligibility phase. That means that they've submitted eligibility applications and they've asked for an initial review by the Commission to see if they are indeed eligible for accreditation. So the philosophy NASPAA takes in approaching accreditation decisions is really threefold. One, it's driven by mission. As Taco said, we're not looking to set a single set of standards to ensure that there is sameness among MPA programs across the globe. In fact, what we're looking for is we're looking for programs that have defined a mission that is representative of both internal and external stakeholders, that is representative of students, employers, and faculty, that demonstrates that they are seeking to achieve some type of goals or outcomes. And so again, the second part of this is it's based on outcomes. We're looking for indicators of quality. So at its heart, accreditation is about continuous improvement. So as Taco said, so the best programs, the leading programs in the world could easily meet these standards. But we're seeking for these programs to set ambitious goals, to seek that to identify that they have created a culture of continuous improvement. And then lastly, focused on public service values. So our accreditation process is not about, we do not accredit countries, we do not accredit governing systems or forms of governance or government. What we're looking for is an emphasis on public service values. And the public service values that NASPAA initially defined align extremely well with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goal number 16, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Unlike our colleagues in Europe, NASPAA only accredits master's level programs in the fields of public affairs, policy, and administration. So a couple of things that we're seeing increasingly through the accreditation process is that public service programs are preparing students to lead across the boundaries of the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. With the blurring of these sectoral boundaries, we're seeing that these programs are preparing students to be able to navigate the increasingly blurred lines. And then finally, we're also looking to for the programs to demonstrate that they're making an impact on the field of public service education, on the discipline of public administration, and in the communities in which they reside. So here are some accreditation indicators that we are consistently and constantly looking at as part of the accreditation process. Really, they can be lumped into two categories. The first are program level goals, and the second is the mastery of student learning outcomes, or the assessment of student learning, or for those of you who are familiar with AACSB, the Business Accreditation Assurance of Student Learning. So we have student learning outcomes. I'll talk more about that. We identify a set of universal required competencies that we expect all programs to commit to training their students in. And then in terms of program level outcomes, we're looking at graduation rates. So if a program is emitting scores of students and they're not graduating them, we're looking at what does that mean for the quality of the program. In terms of employment rates, if a program is setting out for themselves as a goal that they're preparing students for state and local government, but all of their students are going into the private sector, we're trying to see what those employment rates mean for the quality of that public service education. Our state and local governments viewing that program as a legitimate training ground for future public servants. Faculty scholarship. So we're looking, as Taka said, looking to ensure that faculty are current in the field of public administration. But we accredit a wide variety of public administration programs. We have some public administration programs that are housed in the leading research centers of public administration in the countries in which we accredit. And then we also accredit programs where the faculty are doing applied scholarship and they're working with local community agencies and local government agencies to produce applied scholarship. But we're looking for the programs to define that for themselves. And then ultimately, we're looking for overall indicators of effectiveness and satisfaction. In terms of student learning outcomes, we have a set of 5 universal required competencies. We outline these as to lead and manage in public governance, for students to be able to participate and contribute to the policy process, for students to be able to analyze, synthesize, think critically, solve problems, and make decisions, to articulate and apply a public service perspective, and to communicate and interact productively with a diverse and changing workforce and citizenry. What's important about these 5 universal required competencies is that because we have a mission-based approach to accreditation, we do not expect every program to define these in the same way. We do not expect for them to be implemented in the same way at every program. What we do expect is that every program will define these 5 universal required competencies in ways that are A, reflective of their program's mission, and B, reflective of the public service values that the program emphasizes. And I'll speak more to that in a moment. Again, so from a global perspective, these standards are designed not to ensure similarity or sameness among accredited programs, but instead we are seeking for programs to define these universal required competencies in ways that are specific to the program's mission, the local context, and the public service values they emphasize. So the public service values that that are spoken to into the accreditation standards are things like pursuing the public interest with accountability and transparency, serving professionally with competence, efficiency, and objectivity, acting ethically and to uphold the public trust, demonstrating respect, equity, and fairness in dealings with citizens and fellow public servants. And so these are the public service values that we enumerate in our standards, but again, we do not expect programs to adopt these as the basis, these specific public service values as the basis of their public service values that they emphasize in their programs. Again, in Goal 16 and the Sustainable Development Goals, there are a few that reflect these. The promotion of just, peaceful, and inclusive societies, effective, accountable, and transparent institutions, and responsive, inclusive, participatory, and representative decision-making at all levels. So again, we have this United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, we have these public service values, and we expect programs to identify their set of public service values that are representative of those that are important to their community, and that includes faculty, staff, students, employers, and the local context in which they operate. And then finally, we have been working with our colleagues at that have spoken before. Again, we've credited 7 programs in 7 countries, 202 in total. We believe we have standards that are flexible to the cultural context, and we seek out these partnerships with EAPAA and NASPAA because we are seeking to be better at global accreditation, and also so we can foster mutual learning about quality assurance. So I appreciate the opportunity to present, and thank you for the time.
Огромное спасибо, Джеффри.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. I've understood something from the point of view of global accreditation, and if we draw some parallels, I think that it's quite logical to give the floor, because Jeffrey spoke about his global work. We have the same work done by Mr. Komisarov here. But the key phrase of Jeffrey's presentation was that when you give accreditation, you don't give accreditation for the government, for political regimes, you give accreditation for the MPA programs. And I've got a question to Alexei. Those standards, not from the point of view of number of hours, of papers, of discipline, but as to the ideology, to philosophy, to the environment, they are to be given by the state, by the government. There is a so-called line of training of public services specialists, and this line, and I hope that I won't offend our friends, our partners, because we are not only friends but also partners and also competitors. But I hope that you agree that the main projects, the global projects within the framework of the logics of our country, are the project leaders of Russia. I'm a professional, I'm in different levels of training, and the leader in our country from the point of view of those programs of MPA is the High School of Public Services, Public Administration, led by Mr. Komisarov. I've asked him one question and I would like to have an answer, because I know this answer, but I would like to all of you to hear this answer. It's very important, and I'll ask him another question. So the first one, simple and public one: if you can intervene in the evaluation of the commission which evaluates the work with the leaders of Russia, and for our Western colleagues, very in brief about these projects, Russian leaders, because it's very important. I believe that it's symbolic for our country. And the second question, which has to do with your presentation about the standards, not the written standards, but the standards of the training of the high-level managers, based on the result of Executive Master of Public Management program, which is done in our country by your school, is implemented by your school. That's a project which is very important for my academy, for its image. It's something which is the symbol of the past year. So please, you are welcome, you have the floor. Thank you very much for your presentation. Well, I'll start with a brief comment on the Russian Leaders Project. I think that here we have people who don't know about this project. It's a project which was launched last year, or no, in 2018, to find the best public service managers of our country. We get a huge number of requests. First year 199,000, then 227,000, and there were some tests online. And after those tests, those who gave the best result, they passed through a direct evaluation. More or less like the assessment center practice in business, which I used to determine this or that competencies. So we've got 100 winners last year, 103 winners, and many of them, more than 70 persons, they had very important appointments in state corporations and private corporations, although that growth, that sense wasn't the main objective of our competition. It was just like a bonus. Also, they received a grant for an educational program. They can use it as they want to. Some of them use it in High School of Economics, others in Moscow State University. Some of them study in our academy. We have people who study at Skolkovo School, and it seems very important for us because one of the main tasks was not only to find the best public services managers, but also contribute to their development. As to whether it's possible to influence the activities of the Commission, it's impossible. I'm sure about it. All those who have participated in the previous sessions were those who came to the final part of our competition. They saw their colleagues, and all of those who came to the final part and who won. They were there because they showed very good results in remote tests, and after that in direct evaluation. And it's very important for us, and we're very proud of it, because when you organize such big competitions, sometimes you have problems with it. So I've got a question. We have a semi-final in Novosibirsk. Well, all those participants who came to the semi-finals, they received all the information and they were nominated for the award. But basically, the task proposed set by the administration of the president was to make that competition transparent, and our experts, they even didn't know whom they were evaluating to. We will start now at Novosibirsk and then go all by all the cities of our country, and in March we will have the finals of the new stage of our competition. As to your second question, those standards, rating and accreditations which we are discussing today, they are very important, they are very useful, they help to improve the quality of the education, they give us the possibility to exchange the best practices. And I would like to congratulate Igor Boris that your MPA program last year occupied the second place in the European rating for the Eastern Europe. And I also would like to thank our friends from different associations. In the first place, Mr. Taco Branson, Mr. Georgi Heinel and Mr. Osgood for coming here for visiting our forum, because it shows that the quality of our programs will increase. Yesterday and today we've been speaking about the necessity in high quality training for public administration staff, and we've presented a request for NASPAA's admission, and now they're considering it. But also I would like to criticize some standards and tell you about some problematic issues that we see, because we are responsible not only for Russian Leaders program but also for the training of the public servants in our country. And the program which is done by our organization right now is an MPA program, and it's not used too much, but we did it with purpose, because when we say executive, it means that it's a program for the managers of highest level. And we also would like to underline that we need managerial competences, and we will develop them. And while developing that program, we analyzed a lot Lik 1U similar program from Indonesia. We cooperate with them a lot. We exchange experience with them, and basing on our experience of MPM program, we would like to comment on the problems which has to do with standards. In the first place is the duration and the intensity of the program, because according to all the standards, you need 2 years or 1 year and a half when they study in presence, but it's impossible for our students. So the maximum we've had were 8 modules of 4 days in 9 months. And in modern conditions, when everything changes very fast and all the managers of high levels, they have a lot of work to do, we cannot increase this time. The other thing is the structure of the plan of the studies. But we apply an approach which is based on problems, and we have focus on a problem which you have to solve, on a trend, and we structure our program around that issue that we have to solve. And sometimes we have to make some changes in the studies for the solution of this or that case. Also, in case of such programs, the standards establish very strict requirements to the level of teachers, trainers. They have to have scientific degrees in publication, and of course it's important for any university and shows the level of this or that university. But in our case, there is a request for practices from people who deal with situations they need to solve in their day-to-day routine. And also methods of education. All the international standards, they defend the interactive education, but here they seem to be too interactive, because we consider that during the studies our students can learn a lot from each other, and we help their communication. And also we try to use other forms of communication. For example, speaking about digital economy, we organize our lessons in IT companies, and we ask them to show us their best practices. And also I would like to comment on that we experiment a lot. We introduce new lines of education. Now, for example, we have one line which has to do with culture. We see it as an important component for any public servant of high level. And also sports, which we have a special program which is called Running Along Russia, and it's very interesting too. And the last part, which has to do with exams, with approval, and here the main evaluation element of the result is the implementation of a project or the diagnosis of the potential. We evaluate the potential when the program starts and when the program is finished. And that helps us to evaluate the effectiveness of such program. So the conclusion I have is that the standards, they are important, they are useful, without any doubt, but those standards, on the other hand, they shouldn't impede the development, and those programs that seek for new results, seek for a new solution, you have to give the possibility to investigate, to experiment, and not to put a framework which limits those programs and which impedes those changes, which are part of our fast-changing world.
And finally, I'd like to thank all our colleagues and all those who sit in this meeting for an opportunity to share with you. Thank you. Thank you, Alexei Gennadovich. I still will venture one question. Oh, we are looking very closely at you, at how you're roaming around Russia while doing business. Well, let's be frank. What composition of your students? Who is the most challenging? Who are the most challenging students? Who are the most challenging students of all? So we know that, say, cats can hardly be tamed, and the Koklachov Circus of Cats is a unique institution. So who are the students who are most difficult to deal with, who are hardly trainable? Well, let me try this. I've changed my opinion about that over the past 18 months. We started our program with a belief that the higher placed an officer, the more difficulty we'll have in dealing with them, because they have some self-conceit, they are very self-satisfied, they're sure they know everything in the world. It would be next to impossible to change their mindset, to change their outlook, or change their idea of what's good and what's bad. However, as we were going, we came to realize that with the right approaches, the level of interest and the level of perception change easily. And now I have the opposite opinion. I believe that it's more interesting, although more challenging, to deal with high-ranking officials. We learn from them, they learn from us. And also, after they complete their course of learning, they would implement what they learned back at work. And over the past 18 months, 16 governors and 2 federal ministers were appointed from amongst our graduates. And 3 governors have the last name of Nikitin. Look, this can go on forever. I believe that people who are hardly tameable or trainable are deputies or members of the parliament. I believe that Mr. Shaposhnikov, who is the chairman of the Moscow State Legislature, Moscow State Duma, is the best person to take that question. We discussed with him formulating special syllabuses, special training programs for members of legislatures. So I pass the floor on to you. Thank you. Thank you, dear participants. I would indeed like to raise an issue which is rarely raised, meaning training those who will work in legislatures. And I'm not talking about the staff, not support staff or administrative staff, no. I'm talking about either candidates to members of the legislation, members of the legislation, starting from the very low municipalities and all the way up to the national parliament, the State Duma, that is. In Moscow, the Moscow deputy needs to know everything, started with this huge system and all the way to spacecraft. Because in the morning of a given day, we visit some blocks of flats debating renovation, and till the evening where we meet with researchers at, say, at a space research institution. And when students come to visit with us on a tour, they say, and where can I learn to be a deputy, meaning an MP? And it turns out that there's no other place rather than RANEPA, the Russian Academy of the National Economy and Public Administration. If I look back 10 years ago, for the first time, back in 2007, and I graduated from the Institute of Political Science of that academy. We put together a program which is called I'm the Successor, was the lofty name. So, because we wanted to involve the engagement of young people in political activism, political work, so we set up a so-called Youth Chamber of Parliament, which was a backup for the local legislatures. And that was designed to make young people aware of the nature of legislative work. So we launched that program, and it proved to be interesting and successful. However, municipal elections took place later that year, and we then set up another program which is called the PTU 2007, which is a vocational school, technical school, political technology school, and over 9,000 people went through that sieve, and we trained them, and in 2007 over 100 young people were elected deputies to the lower levels of legislature and legislative assemblies. We also have another example dating back to 2002 where several functions were passed on from the city legislature to municipalities. And then it turned out that people have to know a lot of things. How to draft a piece of legislation or a legislative act or a set of regulations. Because we were talking about a lot of money here. Because municipal deputies in Moscow were in charge of distributing 10 billion rubles. So we're talking about a lot of money they handle. They are authorized to appropriate. And this is why we continually hold various training programs and workshops and seminars. And indeed, we have to change and to adapt to the changing environment as we're going, because this is an ever-changing world. Back in the year 2012, we instructed that all meetings of the deputies be webcasted. And some municipalities, like we're sitting here, say, so, but how are we going to make that webcast? Because the closest hotspot for the web access point is at McDonald's across the street there. Well, a few years have passed since then, and we understand there are 1,816 municipal deputies in Moscow, and we simply have to introduce new technologies. So, and we can actually do everything on the web, training exercises and meetings of deputies. Later this year, we're going to hold new elections to the Moscow State Duma, and new MPs will come to office. And, well, this is like a game of chance. We don't know exactly who will come to work as a member of parliament, although this is a city parliament, and they need to be trained properly to work and to hold their office. And I believe this is the most immediate task for us, for our academy, yours and mine. Coming back to the original question of whether we really need this program and who needs it most, I believe that the very fact that this is a full room full of people, is an indication that it is needed. Well, there are political parties in Russia, and there are 63 of them all in all, and they're all entitled to appoint their candidates for the city parliament. And there are MPs, and MPs are also interested in having support staff that would be fully qualified and trained to do their work. And Well, this is a combination of international expertise, theory, and practice. So we went a long way from the PTU 2007 till today. And I want to congratulate you on your success achieved so far, and hopefully in the year 2019 we'll achieve yet another breakthrough with the help of our international colleagues. And thank you so much for coming over to join our discussion. We are always pleased to talk to you. Thank you. Thank you, Alexei Shaposhnikov. And I want you good fortune for 2019 elections. And I'm certain that you do not really need a successor, and hopefully you won't be sitting out there in McDonald's leading your election campaign. Look, if you read today's news, McDonald's lost their right to use the name Big Mac, at least in Europe. It is no longer entitled to. Well, I'm not gloating. I'm not gloating. I'm not ill saying. No, nothing. I believe that it is easy to live through the grief with a friend rather to live through their success with a friend. So, our friends, Andrei Klemenko, the Chief of Department of the Public Administration, and my old friend Alexei Barabashev. We are friends so old that we broke up and made friends again so many times I don't remember. So anyway, I want to thank you on your European accreditation. I wish you well. Certainly I am. So the floor is yours. In duet, I don't think a duet is a good idea. Would rather take turns. Okay. The result of our accreditation was positive. And then it also brought us some new headaches. Oh, that was the second piece of good news. Problems. You have problems. Well, that's good. Good to hear that. This is heartening. Now, let me start with the results. So we're talking about accreditations, common standards. So, but what do we have in the long run? We worked hard for the past 2 years, and we finally got accredited a little more than 12 months ago. For those who want to join this effort, who want to embark on this road, we actually got the result before we were formally accredited, because the first good result is that we realized who we actually were. Because we popped our head out of our hole, and then we received our colleagues and said, look guys, you got this thing wrong and you got that wrong, and that was most useful. But this is generally you comply with our requirements. Yes, you live up to the mark. Secondly, it was good to know more about requirements of potential employers, to get a better view of the labor market. This helped us redefine our posture on the labor market, because we're friends, aren't we? No, you can call us friends, yes, of course. And talking about last year, we actually we took an unprecedented number of students for our programs. I'm not sure exactly whether this is related to our accreditation or not, or whether we have redefined our syllabuses, our way towards stronger, closer cooperation. And this is the way to go for us, I'm sure. The very fact that we got accredited is an end result in itself. On the other hand, this is the beginning of a new process. Of course, we are living in an ever-changing world, and we are oftentimes lagging behind change. So when it comes to programs, we are now at a stage where we need to bolster some aspects of learning of our programs, and life compels us to do so. Digitization, this is something which has been mentioned today several times. We need to introduce new services. We need to apply new approaches to regulation, to public administration as a whole. Of course, our staff, our faculty, is working hard. But we now need to translate this into practical knowledge, into practical training methodologies. When it comes to evidence-based policies, well, this is not new terminology, but well, there's new requirement to make use of that. Evidence-based is the order of the day, if you wish. On the other hand, there are some country-specific aspects of our work. On the one hand, we're talking about, well, traditional things. On the other hand, if you cast a fresh look at that, you see that, well, the content is now different, and the vision is now different. I know that our time is limited here, but our time is limited in general terms. So we no longer place a lot of emphasis on general learning, on some general things. Well, students can take care of that themselves. New methodologies, new methods of teaching, project-based approach. Well, this works for education too. Well, our students are engaged in projects. From day one, we give them projects to work on. And number 3, this is human resources. When we're talking about accreditation, it is so important for people to be involved in the process, people to produce publications, Q1 or Q2, and, well, they do not expect us to come over and bring our papers to those publications. And still, we need to go there. We need to have publications. We apply a very harsh approach about that. Of course, we want to help too. But how can we help? We can offer information. We can offer stats. And there's one thing where we can really become friends. Our journals can be friendly to one another, because we have a journal of public administration. And why don't we give you some space for your publications? No, that. I believe that concerted efforts should help. So now I'd like to pass the floor on to you. Thank you for passing me the floor, because you started saying what I was supposed to say. Oh, that's corporate culture. That's what I call corporate culture. Right. Look, in a tumultuous environment, new things keep popping up. So there are 2 effects of international accreditation. And those are indirect effects, in a sense. The first thing is what Andrei started saying, human resources, publications. Because see, if we are researchers and if we are trainers and teachers, we've got to have publications. A good teacher should not only pass on previous knowledge, but they should be at the spearhead of research. A good course and a good discipline is based on advanced research, based on own research of the trainer. Otherwise, it would be next to impossible to receive an international accreditation. And when we came to face that at full height, our trainers came to realize very quickly that they should comply with ever stringent requirements. They need to be active, both in terms of projects, or they need to be engaged in research. They need to produce publications, and serious publications are indispensable for them. This is why our trainers came to us in droves, asking for their papers to be published. And this helped us boost the rating of our journals, and the journal started growing, and it got in Q3 and scope of size, and getting in the Q3 is unprecedented for Russia.
And now we're going to Q2, which is nothing common and very good result for us. And it was a long and hard work. It's a magazine which is open for everybody. We are publishing in Russian, in English. We have a huge number of requests in English, about 40 requests from different countries for one edition. And I think that it has to do with the accreditation. It's an indirect effect. And the other indirect effect is that we have our own scientific line which is developing, and we understand that we are not just a part of management. We have our own field of public administration, and we introduced a first scientific council for scientific works. Recently we've had the first defense of scientific work and this council, and it's a real breakthrough. We work a lot on that. We put a huge effort on it, and I believe that we are here right now thanks to the preparation for the international accreditation. And the scientific council is international, and we have there are colleagues from different countries, with URI, for example. And as to the accreditation, I have the following conclusion. The international accreditation is important. It's a great challenge. It's a real test for all those who want to be the objective of such accreditation. Sometimes it's quite painful. Some people understand that they are unable to go through that accreditation. Some professors are unable to achieve the necessary level, but those who stepped to that way of development, they continue going, they understand better what they can, what the other can, they do the comparative analysis. And when we spoke about programs of training of higher public servants, you've mentioned several programs, projects, etc. And I've got a question. If we have a practitioner who does all kind of practical projects, he doesn't understand that different theoretical construction, different practical methods, they can contradict to each other and give very bad negative results. So you have to understand what kind of state management paradigms are compatible or incompatible. Otherwise we will destroy the structure of management without understanding it, and we understood it while international accreditation, searching for a balance between the theory and the practice. It's a special question which requires additional analysis and consideration. That's all on my behalf. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's always complicated to differ between the exchange of experience and the publicity. I've got one question. It's probably a childish one, but the question is, how much is it? You said that you've had it to an incredible number of students. how much was it? So we had an increase by 25-30%. For us, it's no. I like the word incredibly. We've never had such an increase. Uh, we've had a boom, and also we see a change in the composition of those who try to become part of our university. We see people with serious achievement, we see people of other quality, and that's taken into consideration that we have now two new programs. Okay, so I have to the right 4 Alexeys and 1 Andrei, and I would like to give the floor to Alexey Shapligin. He represents one of our main partners in this discussion. The Interfax agency is the biggest non-public information agency in our country, and when we meet, we talk a lot, and I am very grateful to Alexey and our colleagues from Interfax agency because they participate in the pilot rating for MPA programs, and it was a very interesting rating, and its results are incredible. Thank you very much for the possibility to make my presentation. And I would like to present you those results of the pilot rating of universities which offers MPA programs. And in the first place, I would like to show you the growth of interest towards the MPA programs and towards the accreditation of the educational programs. We've analyzed a long period of time from 1980s till now, and you can see that there was a boom of interest to this issue during the last 10 years, and we also see a very strong growth towards the accreditation of the educational programs, international accreditation, professional and public accreditation, and all the discussions that has to do with it, the criticism of the state, accreditation of programs, and here you can see some of the participants of that rating of MPA in educational programs. You can see to the right several governors of importance, and I also would like to comment briefly on how that rating appeared. In May of 2017 we've got a meeting on public administration at national and regional level, and among other things we spoke about the possibility of creating a rating able to evaluate the MPA programs offered by different universities, because an accreditation it's supposes a fundamental analysis and require a long period of time. So the consumers of those programs, they cannot use those standardization mechanisms to understand which program and which university is better, and also there was a demand for such a rating from state institutions for all kind of state programs, commercial programs, etc. So at that meeting we've discussed and we set the objectives and goals of such a rating, and we determine the main indicators needed to measure the results of MPA programs offered by different universities. So I won't comment on the goals and objectives of such a rating. If you have time, you can find it in the documentation. And before that meeting, we had made a chart with a detailed picture of MPA programs by that time, and based on that chart we established the main criteria for the universities to enter the rating, and we elaborated a simplified methodology of evaluation of such universities. So the first indicator was the number of profiles offered. Today there are more than 50 of them, but we put some barriers because there are plenty of different issues when you deal with programs which include an excessive number of profiles. They start to cross between each other, so the result is unclear. We've limited this number of profiles. Although there are no universities which offer more than 25 profiles in their educational programs, we took into consideration the programs which had the international accreditation and also those which pass through the social and public accreditation, and we also took into consideration the indicators which give you the most adequate and proven information, including publication of scientific reports prepared by the teachers of faculty staff of all the universities, the publications and magazines which are included in the international scientific system. Here you can see the sources of the data we've gathered, and as a result of that work, we obtained that rating. We used all kind of scales, trying to achieve a balanced and proven result, and here you can see the result based on those four main indicators. So here we have at the first place the Russian Academy of National Economy and Public Administration, and that's basically the top 10 rating of the university. So the most important ones are national universities and universities like Moscow State University, St. Petersburg State University, Russian University of Friendship Among Peoples, and the Southern Federal University. Here you can see the top 50 rating, top 30 rating. You can see it in my paper afterwards if you want to. And here we've got another interesting piece of information. The High School of Economics every year does the monitoring of the quality of the students who go to universities, and in 2018 they did a special kind of monitoring, analyzing all the universities, state universities, non-state universities, and their filials. And here you can see the result, the dynamics of development of MPA programs. Ребят, потише можно, ребята? For the last 9 years. So at the beginning of this decade we had a boom, and there was a state request for MPA programs and commercial programs. And since 2015 there is a strong decrease, and meanwhile, the price of education is growing, the price of MPA programs also is going up. And yesterday, during the plenary session, we listened to the president of the government, and he said that it was necessary, that there was a lack of competence of public administration at national and regional level, and he said that soon we will need to retrain, recapacitate about 1 million of public servants of national and regional level. But even if we see those 6,000 graduates which go from the faculty of MPA, there is still a great space up to that 1 million. And here we speak mostly about the program of extra education, and we will have to focus on the evaluation of MP and other kind of educational programs in this field. And here you can see some results, some conclusions. This is the last slide of my presentation, and I would like to mention the international evaluation of these MPA programs. Peter Diamandis, the co-founder of Singularity University, considers that the public administration in the world, general at global level, is under digitalized, and soon we will see the digitalization of all the public servants and all the public managers, and we have to work on it and try to do it fast. Thank you very much for your attention. That's all on my behalf. So we have the first part with foreign participants, the second part for Alexeis and Andrei, and now I would like to give the floor to these countries, and I would very glad to give the floor to our partner and colleague, the director of the Academy of Public Administration of Kazakhstan Republic President. We have a special presentation for about MPA and Gaidar Forum, and meanwhile Mrs. Jacopa will present its presentation. I will hand her the new version of this magazine dedicated to our Academy and Gaidar Forum. So Fatima, you have the floor.
Our organizers for the invitation, and it's a really good chance to be here and to talk. But then let me just shift to Russian because of the audience. Я хотела бы начать с того.
So in the first place, I would like to say that in our country, the accreditation process, we have it for a while by now, but many issues that were mentioned by our colleagues from foreign associations and from Russia. They are still there. In the first place, my country is part of Bologna process from 2010, and we have this three levels system of staff training, and we have all the processes starting from the curriculum design and other processes. They are organized as it's required for the accreditation. On the other hand, it's very important to take into consideration that accreditation is not just a process. We are not speaking about some articles, etc., but it's a culture, it's accountability, it's the history of the university, and generally accreditation helps a lot to our universities. In Kazakhstan we have two accreditation agencies which form part of European Quality Accreditation Agency, and Kazakhstan since 2012 is a member of MICAT, so it's not, I'm not speaking about publicity. Yeah. I also would like to mention that we all have the same problem, and there is a good strategy which is called the Blue Ocean strategy, which says that to be competitive you have to compete with yourself, because here everything depends on you. And my presentation is a presentation of a leader of a university which trains public servants. We have to speak about global trends. Yesterday at plenary sessions, many politics powers, including the representatives of the Russian Federation, spoke about those trends. And I also, preparing for this presentation, spoke with our colleagues from other universities, and we all agree that accreditation makes us move faster, and we have to measure the speed of our internal changes and see whether it responds to the speed of the rate of the external changes. And if we are back, we have to search for a capacity to eliminate this distance. Our main stakeholder is the population of Kazakhstan and the public administration which serves to the population of Kazakhstan. Today we are evaluated as professionals strategically.
And how the system of civil service needs to change. So I've given you a snapshot of a list of items. First, a focus on public values and tools of innovations. Before that, I attended a session on financial technologies and digitization, digital technology, and people were saying that digital technologies make people happier. If we have a task of making the world happier, we certainly need to make use of digital technologies. A culture of continual improvement and change. I already mentioned the Blue Ocean strategy. And, well, there are several other strategies which help us work a little better with every coming day. And I wanted to mention the digital maturity of governments. Well, this is something provided by Gartner, starting from e-government to smart. And when we want to introduce innovative technologies in civil service, well, these are the trends to follow to achieve the level of smart government. Project management, there's nothing new here, apart from the fact that we have a national standard by which our academy was certified, and we actually got trained by the Prince 2, the UK standard, and we use administration methodologies based on these standards, and our public administration programs are implemented based on the project management approach, which are briefly listed here. What are the major competences we require? First thing is for you to do would be to visit our website and see our curriculum. We identify the competences like global vision, transformation, leadership, and effective communication, strategic vision, systemic management, adaptive leadership, and others. Well, there is a whole set of competences. However, we do not limit ourselves to the 11 mentioned here and defined together with international experts. We offer a broader outlook. And here the programs for the master's degree and doctorate degree, PhD, and we work together with the schools of public policy, and we use this model when a person wants to apply for a higher level of learning. As regards public administration, we've introduced digital public administration and digital public management, anti-corruption policy, and public policy and law. Later this year, we're going to launch human resource management, because this is not just part of a fashion. This is not a current buzz. This is something different. This is essential. And yesterday it was said that human resources need to change the way they're working. They need to stop working with paper and shuffle paper. They need to work with people. This is the only way to change human motivation. And like I said, that Kazakhstan only works on the bachelor's degree, master's degree, and PhD. We offer a PhD in public management and international relations. Well, this is a very brief schematic of the 4 levels we offer as part of our program, and each associated with a set of specific skills. Well, MPA maybe from mid-career officials and others for senior officials and others. It is all stratified. And the same goes for the learning outcomes. And the system of admission. Yes, the admission system is the way it should be. There's no way of getting admitted without English fluency. And we also increased our set of requirements for the faculty. This is essential because the research methods and research basics are also indispensable. Our applicants are required to write an essay which is reviewed and assessed, and for the 2nd year in a row we admit people based on a specific topic useful and required for their public office, because after they graduate they want to come back to their job, to their work, and be useful to them, because it will take them 1 year or 2 years or 3 years to graduate. They want to be ready for their new position. They want to be useful. And we also have a foreign component, and we work very closely with our counterparts from the United Arab Emirates, from Europe, from the United States. And this is something which should always be as a foreign component. We introduce academic mobility, and 1 semester our applicants would spend at the Maxwell Syracuse University, Syracuse Public School. And another important thing is that when we admit people, our counterparts from the Maxwell schools are involved in the admission process, and they would interview our applicants so that they be confident in what kind of applicants we admit, so that they could have confidence in our curricula and we are confident in their curricula. During year 2, our would-be masters may actually join an MBA course and go for 12 months, complete their learning at Maxwell Syracuse University. So much has been said about the mission at this session. So we do have a well-defined mission, we do have a well-defined program, and it is essential both to restructure business processes, but base them on the shared of governments model. And so I believe that academic freedom is the principle that should be implemented, should be fully realized. This is something which should be common to all good universities. So starting with 2011, Kazakhstan has actually switched over to a system of credits and transfer credits. It is all in place. And finally, how do we select applicants for the two-stage programs? Like I mentioned, Maxwell Syracuse are involved in the selection and admission process. Just a couple of words about the Digital Academy. We have the Digital Kazakhstan. This is a program underway in our country, and we are introducing new Digital Master of Public Administration program, which I already mentioned, and we do digital training is also compulsory for public servants. And we are also actively using the multimedia and 3D and augmented reality. Well, these are the gadgets which are commonly in use here as part of the Digital Academy process. And we receive much support from the government and presidential administration, and we are rapidly becoming paper-free because, well, professional nature, openness, transparency, and care of the outside world. This is something which compels us to be paper-free.
Потому что наши выпускники должны...
Finally, we teach how to lead in a changing world because we need to face global challenges. We need to ensure inclusive education. We're ready to take a leading role in decision-making. Well, I think these are commonly accepted things which require no further discussion. I'm thankful for this opportunity. Thank you for this invitation to the 10th Gaidar Forum. This is an exceptional and unprecedented forum. Thank you. Thank you so much, Fatima, for your kind words. Thank you for your input. And anyone? Others? Anyone compelled to speak? All right. Then let me wrap it up with a brief information about the DP program. Thank you. Starting this coming October, we're launching a new program, the DP program, the Doctor of Public Administration. This is going to be the best and the highest program for the Academy. Why do I say so? We're going to involve 60 very highly placed officials from the various levels of government. This is not just an educational program, this is a research program, and the rector actually instructed us to select those people who would not just come up with a lot of paper, but those people who would be able to make tangible outcome of their research work, 12 educational modules. That would go on for 2 years, and every module will take 8 weeks. So that potential attendees from regions and from around the world can come over for the weekend, for 2 or 3 days by the end of the week, and to take part in this exercise. Apart from traditional forms of education, forms of learning, we also plan to introduce tutorship. And so a person who works on a specific project will receive a tutor from the academy and a tutor from the bodies of government who will lend them their hand, lend them a shoulder, and give them practical assistance. People used to say that our attendees need to develop soft skills. So each module will be focused in part on negotiating skills, on camera work. This is a research course, so we'll also be developing skills of international publications. Well, there's a DPA .ru, which may also be essential for you to learn. We want the scientific supervisor of the program to take very close part in this process, and we are specifically talking about Mr. Soroka, who works at the government staff. Thank you. And now the final part. And now I require my two colleagues who listened carefully to everybody speaking, and I want them to draw the line. I would like Mr. Sutherland give us an overview of this meeting, and he comes from GIMO. And the very final words will be delivered by Juraj Nemec. And this will bring today's discussion to the end. I'm sorry if not everyone has had a chance to speak. So please, you have the floor. Thank you. Thank you indeed. First, thank you for your invitation to speak at this forum. This is the 10th Gaidar Forum. It is the first forum for me. We come from the Department of Public Administration and Politics. I was very interested in listening to my colleagues during this session. Many presentations were very detailed when it came to the description of international standards. Let me mention three ongoing trends which we need to make note of. We do not simply share our experience. We are advertising. We use this as a marketing opportunity, if you wish. So I would like to use my opportunity to invite you to cooperate, and we could make part and parcel of the three ongoing trends you mentioned. We also want to improve our competitive position. We are Department of Politics and Public Administration. There were two departments at GIMO which were totally separate from one another. And there used to be a Department of Political Science where I actually wrote my thesis, and I also graduated from the Institute of Public Administration, and eventually they decided to merge these two departments. And we are now the largest department at GIMO. We have 1,500 students, which is probably something like, well, 1 year for N. Higgs. However, our university is fairly small as compared to RANEPA. And still, we are pursuing our path, and I am not a proponent of universal public administration models. However, there is the UNDP, and UNDP believes we are at a stage where public administration is more of governance rather than public management. And although they involve a lot of political decision-making. So it is essential for our students to be well-versed in public administration methodologies, not be more than good technologists, economists, or lawyers, but we want them to be well versed in handling political risks, because this is very important and an important skill for them. For our university, it is also important that our people have a good understanding of the ongoing political processes and political trends. Political scientists have started learning public administration too. And this may be a novelty for our university, but public administration is going to be a mandatory discipline at all departments of our university, which is MGIMO. And this is an indication of the ever-growing importance of public administration. Our colleagues mentioned several times a trend which is digitization, digital technology. Yes, we agree. We certainly associate and want to join the club. 3D printers are getting increasingly cheap.
Like the regular printer. We have to train a state specialist and explain them what they will have to deal with in the following 6 years, but it's almost impossible and they'll be underqualified. And we understand that our university is different by its structure and by its contents from the classical big universities like Moscow State University, for example. We don't have mechanical and technical faculty, biological faculty, medical faculty. So many new fields that we have to develop to be able to compete. We always have to choose between the creation of new departments and looking for new trainers and professors, or do what we do, is to find the best partner for such work in a foreign state, and we opened a double master department and offering our students new lines of education, as our university is very specialized. For example, this year, only this year, we will launch 8 double master classes, master programs, and it's quite a number, and one of them is Smart City Management program. And we understand that one of the leaders in the field are the South Korean universities, so we've got an alliance with one of the best South Korean universities. And after a year of studies in South Korea and 4 months practice in municipalities of Sangdok, one of the examples of smart city, our students, they come back, they study half a year more and have other practice, and this is the third trend we have, the internationalization, which allows our students to improve even more their dominion of foreign languages, and also it compensates the abilities and the competences which are inaccessible to us in a short time. So we are open not only to the cooperation not only with the foreign universities, but also I mean foreign universities of European countries, of Korea, but also to cooperation with Commonwealth of Independent States universities, and we also will sign an agreement between Moscow Foreign Affairs University and Moscow State University for cooperation and for exchange of students. We've got a number of partners like Yonsei University, which helps us to compensate the technological specialization. And in our university we have 54 languages in MGIMO University, and it's a Guinness record. We have a plaque which confirms it, and it seems interesting to us to have the possibility to combine our platforms and to join our efforts to be more competitive. Thank you very much. Thank you, Henry. And now Juraj has a double responsibility. He has to speak about issues we spoke about, and also, as you here represent both parts, the accreditation system, and also pass through many stages with our colleagues, with our universities. Probably you can offer us some results and make some conclusions of our discussion.
To be as short as possible because we are really out of time. And okay, I am working with EAPAA accreditation, as Taco already indicated, but my goal is here also to inform you that there is also a third accreditation body connected with International Institute of Administrative Sciences for public administration. It's EAPAA, and maybe EAPAA can be also answer for some programs which, like mentioned by Prorector Komissarov, because EAPAA is accrediting only degree programs, Taco, yeah? So EAPAA can accredit and already accredited all training programs. Because one of the core tasks before you start accreditation, you have to decide which body and which category. So EAPAA is a body if you want to deal with your training program where no formal academic degree or it's shorter or so on, you have EAPAA, which is AIS. Two accreditation systems are connected somehow to International Institute of Administrative Sciences because EAPAA is indirectly connected via ECPA as the organization of AISIA. NASPAA is independent, oldest, largest, and I hope we will cooperate in future much more. Because the second issue which I really want to stress here, it's not only choice where to go and what kind of accreditation. It was not mentioned by Taco or Georgi. EAPAA and especially EAPAA has also category for those who cannot jump these 6 meters. If you remember the slide by Taco, it was about 6 meters. Yes, it's for Leuven, it's for Erasmus Rotterdam and so on. But if you have schools which can jump today 4 meters, you have certification. And it's already one Russian school with certification, too many, it was not mentioned here. EAPAA certification for 3 years, but it's still good result. So not only one category on one level of accreditation for those who can jump 4 today, but are willing to jump 6 in few years. It's certification. And to be open, it's that last point I wanted to mention, it's joint. I was expected to speak about joint EAPAA and EAPAA because they can do together, and they already started. So I was part of EAPAA accreditation where EAPAA was invited in Cairo, and I was part of EAPAA accreditation where EAPAA was invited. So you can do joint accreditations where you invite more accreditations bodies to come, not only to get more diplomas, but maybe to increase efficiency of the process. And yesterday, you somehow approved your national standards. They are international, thanks to help of EAPAA. And if you have your national accreditation by European standards, then joint accreditation, nacionalna общественная аккредитация, and international accreditation by EAPAA or even EAPAA, maybe in future we can go 3 bodies to have full coverage. It's very good chance, and this is something what was not offered here. And maybe last sentence, Alexei promoted his journal, but I have to say, NISPA has for this region, NISPA C journal. It's also Q3. And as editor-of-chief on this journal, it's a big pain for me that we still have problem to have 20 good articles from the region in 1 year. So please try to help me with this nightmare for me to have 20 good articles per year. Thanks very much, and thanks for the invitation again.
Thank you very much, dear friends. I believe that we had more questions than answers, and there will be no conclusions, because our real conclusions are our results, our graduates, our work. Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you, our American colleagues, European colleagues, CIS colleagues, non-European colleagues, Russian colleagues. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. We are very late. We didn't keep to our times, and I feel guilty. But we've had a very interesting discussion. So I ask. I would like to ask all of you. I give the floor to Natalia, and she will say what we have to do right now.